Hey, Pramod. Can't thank you enough for doing this. Welcome back. It's good to have you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Hey Matt, good to talk to you again.
Yeah, you as
Looking
well.
forward to this.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so I thought about this driving home last night, and I kind of wanted to ask you this in terms of professional challenges that you've faced. Do you think 2020 was probably one of the toughest years you've faced professionally?
I think indeed it was, especially in my current role. I mean, I've faced challenges professionally at different levels, right? But in terms of leading Ruckus Business or as a leader, 2020 was definitely very challenging because think about it, right? One fine day, we decide that we're going to all work remotely, navigating the supply chain challenges that initially came because there was a disruption, right? In China where it started, navigating that. And then at the tail end of this pandemic, now we are seeing supply chain challenges, and I'd love to talk more about it. But that's one of the things that we're dealing with. So it's definitely been a very interesting year. But I have to be very thankful for the fact that I've started traveling again. So a couple of weeks back, I spent time with some partners in New York. I brought my team in Sunnyvale, for an offsite, and just being able to connect with people has been really amazing. And I just feel like I'm so thankful for our larger team for being resilient through all the challenges because that's what allowed us to survive and in fact thrive. Right? We've come out of it really well, and I know that some of our teams were impacted by COVID more than others, while in US we seem like we're returning to normalcy. In general, the trends are positive everywhere, but I do most recently until about a month or two back, India was very heavily impacted, and I really and I know some of the teams personally were impacted, so we really feel for that. But again, in the larger scheme of things, I think we came out of it really well, and I'm really looking forward to now bouncing back from that and in returning to normalcy everywhere, I guess.
I think I can safely speak for most all of us that there's a large level of appreciation for how you and your team handled this. I mean, it was panic, it was chaos, there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of things going on, and I think there was a general sense of comfort when you feel like you're supported through the business with, hey, we get it, we're all in this spot. So that was very telling, and I've got friends in the industry and outside of it, and there's some places that did not handle it well, right? I mean, and you're going to get that. You're going to have the up and down. So for all of us, I think I'd like to say thank you to you and your team for that.
No, yeah, again, it's a teamwork, and I should say that even at the corporate level, Comscope did a great job in responding to the crisis, dealing with situations as they developed in real time. Just as an example, right, when we were in the thick of this in India, people organized, self-organized, and helping people find critical care, organizing vaccination drives, and it was supported by the corporate, but also led voluntarily by many of the leaders on ground. So it was just amazing effort all around.
Yeah, it's really cool to see the humanitarian piece of it. And then that's when you get into something like now, because now people are starting to return to the office and they're starting to come back, and we're starting to see some of that. And I think it makes that reunion when you do meet back up in the office a little bit sweeter, right? Because you've seen all of these humanitarian efforts going on and you've seen kind of the struggles that people have dealt with. So, you know, what's kind of going on that front, at least from your perspective, and return to work, at least in the U.S. I know some other areas in the world are struggling, but what's
Yeah,
some of the
yeah,
take?
yeah. In US, and particularly in Sunnyvale, because I'm the site leader here. So we've now allowed people to come in as long as you're vaccinated. There's a process by which you get that verified, and then you get a sticker on your badge, and you're not allowed. You don't need to wear a mask when you're inside the building, but it's voluntarily. I think it's up to people to decide whether they want to come in or not. And there are more people coming in as I can see. I've started spending a few days in a week myself in office. Um, but starting September, that's the timeline that we expect it to be back to how it was pre-pandemic. But to your previous comment, I completely agree that while we all celebrated the fact that look, we are all virtual and we're still being productive, and we can do all the things that we did before virtually. So we went through that phase. But when we came back, like I said, I had this offsite with my team a couple of weeks back, and everybody agreed that my God, we really missed this energy in the room. We could connect, right? And it is different. I think you need a mix of both. I think it's great to have technology, but I think nothing can replace that in person meeting for sure.
Yeah, it's extremely valuable. I mean, I remember years back because as much as I normally travel, you have a dinner at night or whatever, and I was talking to my wife about it one night, and she's like, "Why do your dinners take so long?" And I said, "You'd be amazed at how much gets done at dinner." It's crazy. So, all right, so let me touch on the business piece of it. I think the industry as a whole is kind of seeing some positive momentum in the right direction with things that are going on. Um, I guess I'll do the CNBC boilerplate question. What are your thoughts on that? What are you seeing in terms of product growth or market growth and economic direction? How are things there?
Yeah, no, I'm very, very positively surprised. I would not have anticipated what we are seeing right now, the last few quarters and this quarter, in terms of what we are seeing in the market right now, like how we would bounce back from the pandemic. I think we have seen strength across the board. I think there's definitely an increase in spending on networking Wi-Fi, but we're seeing this in switching as well. Switching has come back very strong. We have seen businesses, particularly pockets of businesses like education. We're doing very well. We're very happy with what we are seeing there. The MDU business, I think people are realizing they need better Wi-Fi. So we've seen tremendous growth there. I think part of it is being driven by just the economy returning, but part of it is also due to the enormous funding from the government, the stimulus funding that is going into infrastructure, right? I was talking to these partners in New York, and they were telling me about how much money is there in the education systems to upgrade networks, and that's what is driving the demand that we see. And these are all in areas where we've traditionally been strong, so we're seeing positive, effects of that. But even when you think about like, okay, how long will the stimulus funding last? Right now, there's a talk about the infrastructure bill that is being discussed, and that has got some things in there for broadband. So I'm really optimistic about what we have seen. Tremendous growth across. We've seen growth in also areas of business that we've been really focused on, like the subscription business, the cloud business. CloudPath, for instance, for Ruckus had a great quarter last quarter. So extremely happy with what the sales team has done, and what we have seen in the market in general for our products. And it was great to see. It's part of it is what we've seen in terms of the market returning, but I want to also recognize what the teams have done on the product front. When I talk to our partners, they say anytime they go into a proof of concept with our products against our competitors, right, they very rarely lose because of the strength of our products. We did this third-party study recently to compare ourselves with Wi-Fi 6 products and what we do with analytics against our competitors. And the results are out there. We publish this externally, right? And I think our partners are validating that. They say that, hey, we never have product issues with your products, and that's what in some of these really critical areas where they need the right performance and the right products. If we can get in and show our products, we really come out strong. So I think confluence of great products, demand generated by all the things that are happening, the economy returning is really created like, we are in a good shape. I'm really happy with what we're seeing out there.
Good. So I'm sitting here kicking around in my head in what order I want to ask you this, because I do want to talk about supply chain, and everybody knows the term silicon shortage right now. Um, but when it comes to, you mentioned services that we have as well. I mean, there's always going to be a need for hardware, right? We're always going to have that. But there's also a need for services. And I think services have really increased in my mind in terms of what a traditional network guy knows, right? We've seen a big uptick and increase in that. I mean, Analytics is a great example of that. Ruckus Cloud is a great example of that. When you look at these subscription-based services, what does the future of that look like? I mean, is there going to be big shifts in that? And the reason I'm asking is because you are starting to see areas where there's a great benefit to a company saying, hey, we can offload all of this out of our data center and offload it into the cloud. I mean, there's benefits to them, that are this long. I mean, you can go through it all day long, but what does that future look like from your perspective?
Yeah, no, great question, Matt. So, I mean, it's like you said, we all know now that cloud and transition to cloud is happening. That's the faster growing part of the business when it comes to Wi-Fi and campus generally. Cloud managed networking is probably growing, several times faster than on-prem, and that I think has been known, and we've seen that coming, and we see that in our own business now. There are parts of the network where they might deploy it at the edge, they might deploy it on-prem because they need that, that latency or that responsiveness, or there might be other reasons. But when it comes to the services, cloud is the best way to consume that. When it comes to Ruckus Analytics, because you need the scale of cloud to be able to consume all the telemetry that is coming in from the devices. You need the compute that is available in the cloud, the flexibility of that to run the machine learning and the AI algorithms and derive insights out of it. We were recently talking to an analyst, and he talked about the growth which is expected in services. And it was precisely the type of services like analytics, which I think customers are realizing that when it comes to deploying Wi-Fi, especially now with Wi-Fi 6 and then 6E coming along, enterprise networks, are becoming more capable, but they're also increasingly becoming more complex. And it's becoming more difficult for customers to tune and optimize their networks, right? And so something like Ruckus Analytics is very important in helping simplify the network. I mean, my vision, Ruckus's vision, I think what we're all working towards is continuing to simplify, because that's what Ruckus's history and pedigree is, right? We develop very high performing networks, but we also make it very simple for people to deploy it, all the way from where we started with, in Zone Director and Unleashed, and what we did for MSP deployments with Smart Zone. So we want to continue to do that and make it so that it's just like utility. You flip a switch and networking works, and it's autonomous. It self-configures, figures out what's wrong, what needs to be changed. That's what we are working towards. And Ruckus Analytics is a very important piece of that, because we're running, one of the things that I'm really excited about that this team is working on towards realizing that vision is they're adding capabilities so that we can self-monitor the network. So I talked about the complexity of Wi-Fi 6, 6E. Sometimes these things need to be tuned based on the type of configuration you have, because there are unique usage patterns, the unique characteristics of all the deployments. So we're putting in that telemetry so that you can assess what's happening in the network, compare it with what we are seeing is the best of breed deployments, what is working elsewhere, and then come up with suggestions for what you need to change. And the operator just needs to click a button and say, yeah, I accept these changes. And then once they change it, we can also then monitor and say, before, what was your network like? We have a set of metrics that we can measure to see is the network operating better before or afterwards. And if not, then go back to what it was, right? And, some of these changes I had challenged the team to come up with this, last year, and I'm really pleased with how far they've come. That I'm seeing now mock-ups and, demos, and some of these are going to be in our product by the end of this year. We'll truly reach this and realize the vision of what we call as autonomous networking. So long-winded answer to your question, but services and Ruckus Analytics is absolutely going to be key to our future in terms of realizing that vision of, you just deploy your APs, drop it in, and then, it's like a self-driving car version of it. It'll run, it'll figure out what's wrong, and you just need to monitor and see what is happening in the network as it self-drives and optimizes, right? So amazing work going on, a lot of innovation going on there in Ruckus. I'm really pleased with how far we've come.
One of the cool things about that is, I know if you're not aware, there is the ability to obtain a 90-day trial to Ruckus Analytics, which in my opinion is genius, because what's going to happen is the first 30 days, they're going to sit there and go through the product and, learn it and figure out how to navigate it and go through it. And then day 31 through 60, it's going to be kind of like that daily thing where they're going through and looking for improvements and everything else. And the day 61 to 90 is going to be running around scrambling, getting to finance, saying, you need to cut a PO. We need this.
Yeah. Again, this customers, the partners I visited in New York, right? I was talking to one of them, and they are actually using this. In this case, it's not the end customer, but the MSP deploying Ruckus Analytics, so they can serve their customers and cater to the SLA that they promised them in terms of troubleshooting, right? And they told me multiple cases of how, before using Ruckus Analytics, they would have been running around trying to troubleshoot logs from various parts of the network and go through troubleshooting over days and weeks to try to get to the bottom of it. And here they are with RA. They're like, I was right there. The system told me what was wrong, and that it was an issue with a particular radius server having some latency issues, and so that in our industry, especially with Wi-Fi, the challenge has always been proving that the issue is not Wi-Fi. I think that's what many partners and many IT departments struggle with, because often the problems are somewhere else, but the user looks at it as like Wi-Fi is an issue. with RA, you can get to the bottom of it, literally within minutes, right? Or even seconds sometimes, where it tells you like, hey, here's I'm seeing an issue in this region with this thing. This is what it was before. Now it looks like, and you can get to the bottom of it. So yeah, I mean, people who have trialed it come back very pleased, and and we're getting that amazing feedback from partners who have deployed it, in turn to manage their networks.
That was always my favorite trouble ticket that I'd get when I was in operations. The internet's not working. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So I don't. Okay, so I do. Let's talk about supply chain a little bit. And before I put any of my 2 cents in there, because a lot of my conversations are with people like my parents and my aunt and uncle and things like that for completely different reasons. But let's get your take on supply chain and how things are going there.
Yeah. So this happens to be probably the biggest challenge. I think not just us, but everybody in networking and everybody in high tech is facing right now. Like you said, it's not lost on people. If you're reading the press, I think you hear things like silicon is the new gold and all of that, right? But it's sort of like a perfect storm. There are issues with capacities. We've heard about shortages of components, but capacities and fabs. And at the same time, the demand, like I said, is like exploding. So all of these things are combining, where it's definitely been a very challenging environment. We're working very closely with our partners, silicon suppliers, as well as folks supplying components, to get visibility into what this looks like. I can tell you, I'm spending more of my time than I ever have with our vendors and with our supply chain team, and making sure that we can, in a difficult environment, do the best we can to smoothen out. And I think we're succeeding there. Things will improve over a period of time, but right now, it seems like the challenges will persist for some time. So what can we do about it? First of all, I have to thank the supply chain team, the PLM team, because they're working under a crisis-like situation and trying to make sure that they're smoothing out some of the challenges that we see. We are getting the support from our partners, and we are doing the best we can to be fair about, in the context of all the demand and the backlog that we have, what's the best way to be fair to our customers, to provide transparency to them rather than promise to them, which is something which is speculative. Tell them what we know, and then do the best that we can in terms of allocating products in a way such that it's fair across these customers. Because as I talk to some of these partners, their end business depends on it, right? They plan their projects out based on our forecasts of when we can deliver things, and they sign in contractors and start their projects. And if products don't come in the time that we promise them, they take in huge losses because of that. So I think we realize that we are doing what we can in terms of being as transparent as we can. In the meantime, we are working through these issues to make sure that we have better predictability. So it is something which, as we follow in the industry, not just Ruckus, but everybody in our space is facing. We hear this from our suppliers as well. But you will see this as we work through the process. It'll get better in terms of how we communicate, and our supply situation will get better on many fronts. As we go towards the end of the year, and build better predictability into the system.
A lot of this I didn't know until I started having conversations with people that are not in high tech, like my dad, for example, or my uncle, his brother. Because my uncle just bought a new truck. And I asked him when he got his truck, I said, how many keys did you get? And he went, what? I said, how many keys did they give you? He said, 2. And I said, well, that's interesting, because I talked to a friend of mine he's in the car business, and he said Toyota told him, they said, we can do one of 2 things. We can deliver 1 car with 2 keys, or we can give you 2 cars with 1 key apiece. And I think that's when it finally started to sink in, and they asked me, like, what? And I said, you have to understand that when they build these chips, when this stuff is produced, these guys in the clean rooms that are doing it, that room is 1,000 times cleaner than an operating room, than an OR. And that's when both their eyes kind of lit up, and I was like, yeah, this stuff is very, very complex. I mean, it's not a simple technology, and we keep making it smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's just crazy when we deal with these hurdles and challenges in our industry, and then all of a sudden it starts to leak out into the greater world. You start to see that kind of look of what is going on here. But like you said, I mean, I think there's been a lot of great efforts put into kind of getting back to square one, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So I was gonna ask you this. The first thing when you finally got to the point of, we're coming out of this and everything's, kind of starting to normalize a little bit. What was the first thing that you and your family wanted to go do?
um, well, I guess small things and large things. We took our first vacation. We went to not very far. We went to Carmel Valley Ranch, and stayed there for 3 days. And it was so refreshing just to be out, and being able to go out to a restaurant and do small things, go out for hikes, go to the beach. So I think that was very nice. I think I've started going out now to restaurants. Initially we were going out, as you know, in the Bay Area, it was about outdoor seating was allowed at one point in time. Now indoor is allowed. So I think just small things which we took for granted, just the pleasure out of those small things. It was just amazing to see. Coming back to office, like you can see, I'm working out of my office right now. I can't tell you how nice it is to be able to sit in, in a normal desk and not be constrained, through the challenges that you have working out of house that we all, come to realize, right? So, I think I'd say, just being able to go out on that vacation was awesome. I'm going for my second vacation there in a few weeks, and being able to just do the normal things that we took for granted before.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so this is a selfish question. We saw one thing that we saw during 2020 was micro macro learning kind of things. So we saw our YouTube viewership go way up during it, which we expected, and we saw a lot of additional traffic through the LMS for training and things like that. And we're used to the typical, 5-day class, come in, sit down, go through it. In terms, because information is so readily available now through so many different platforms and mediums, when we take, especially as broad and diverse as our portfolio is, what do you think some of the different trends or the future of training and information consumption will become for technology?
That's a good question. I think what I'm increasingly seeing, the attention span to be able to watch something which is, more than 15, 20 minutes, is challenging, right? So I think we've all sort of got a little bit of ADD given how we consume everything these days. So, so breaking it down into things which are smaller and more succinct is, I think, the way to go. Obviously, video is the way to do it. Um, so yeah, I'd be curious on your thoughts, because you're the expert in this space, right? What trends are you seeing? Because if I just, as a consumer of this, I would say that when I go and watch something which is interesting, if it's something very long, I find myself pausing, skipping, and through the stuff which I don't want. And that way, if you can break it down into smaller bites, I can decide what is of interest to me and just focus on that. I think that makes sense. Um,
I've really been trying to crack that open a little bit, because when I look at it from the standpoint of, we have seasoned veterans out there that need further education, right? So new product, new technology, new protocol, whatever. So you need to be able to hit that mark. And then we also have a generation up and coming that's going to enter this sector that you still need to make sure they're fully equipped with everything, but they consume information completely differently, like you said. I mean, our kids, if it's a TikTok or a reel or whatever, they're into it. They can go through it. So it's really trying to break those two pieces and make it fit. So we're trying to find ways to introduce shorts, right? A short 1-minute clip that kind of drives interest into something, and then give them access to get to the broader subject of it from there. And then the big thing is, for the seasoned veterans like myself, and I talk to a friend of mine about this all the time, I don't want a video for a lot of things. I mean, if I'm trying to fix my backflow preventer at home, which I can do, yeah, I probably want a video because I need to see what I'm doing. But with this stuff, sometimes I don't necessarily want one. So we end up in the position where we have the video content for the newer generation coming in that's interested in that, but we also have to have supporting documentation that gives them that, and in a clear, short, concise enough way that it's easily, quickly consumed, and then you're done. Because when we first entered this space, we knew right away you have 90 seconds to grab somebody's attention because of the ADD problem, right? So as soon as you grab that, then you have to hold on to it. And I've talked about this on podcasts before. I mean, we did a lot of research internally through YouTube videos and through Twitch streams and things like that. And I talked to Brian Stewart about this, and I said, I don't get it. And he said, what do you mean? I said, there, some of these streamers are just complete spaz cases. Like, I can't follow them. I can't pay attention to it. And he said, that's the draw. He said, you've got a generation of people coming into it that they grab their attention, and so they're going to sit there and listen. I was like, okay, I get it. I mean, we're not playing video games here. We're actually trying to educate you on things. But it was really interesting to see when we started to crack these things open, what was inside. And I think really right now it's going to be quick, short clips that grab your attention, get you some information, and then get you pointed in the right direction to get the rest of it.
Yeah, that seems the way to go. Yep.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting, but it's also one of those things where you do it, you're going to trip and fall down at some point. So you might as well get up and dust yourself off and learn from it, and then continue down that path too. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's interesting. You never know what it's going to be like until you kind of get halfway through it, and you're like, oh wait, turn left. So, you know.
To learn that. Yeah.
So yeah. Well, Pramod, again, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. It's always an absolute pleasure to have you come in and do this. And as always, you're always welcome back. So I try not to hound you, and I know you're busy. So anytime you want to do it,
Thank you for your patience this time. I know we've been trying for a few weeks, but between the travel, as the economy opened, meeting customers, I had to keep pushing it out. But I'm really glad we were able to connect today. And yeah, we should do this again sometime sooner than how long it took this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very patient. So whenever you're ready, I'm ready. So
all right. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
All right. See you, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Ruckcast. If you just found us for the first time, be sure to follow or subscribe on your platform of choice so you can be notified of future episodes. If you have ideas for future episodes or can't find Ruckcast on your favorite platform, contact us at ruckcast@comscope.com. And as always, thanks for listening.